Welcome to Leadership Talk. The topic today is alternative voting. What is Leadership Talk? Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development industry leadership staff provide free webinars on building the organizational capacity within the agriculture sector, which results in high-performing organizations. Our disclaimer: this content is designed for informational purposes only. This information is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice. Organizations should consult their professional advisors related to specific situations. Topics covered in our webinar: jurisdictional guidelines and legal counsel, common voting methods, organizations' bylaws, technology and voting, advantages and disadvantages, silent bylaws, examples of bylaw wording, resources and tools. Jurisdictional guidelines and legal counsel. Jurisdictional guidelines: what is allowed in your area? Consult legal counsel when drafting or changing bylaws to allow for electronic voting or alternative voting. Some Canadian examples follow. Definition of voting: a formal indication of a choice between two or more candidates or courses of action, expressed typically through a ballot or a show of hands. To add to this definition, using voice to express votes is also used. A or nay is quite commonly used, or the terms for or against the motion. Voting methods. We're going to look at the ways of traditional methods, other methods, and new methods. Traditional voting in person is the most common way that decisions are made at a board meeting. Following the guidelines of their constitution, members gathered around the table vote on issues pertaining to the board and the business that it carries out. Votes that may be by secret ballot or by a show of hands or by a reply of A or nay. Votes are counted and then the motion is recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Other methods of voting are used when it's not possible for everyone on the board to attend the meeting in person. Examples would be mail-in voting, voting by proxy, or absentee voting. We'll talk about some of these later in the presentation. Advantages of electronic voting and electronic meetings. Allowing electronic participation in board meetings could help attract and retain directors from all parts of your service area, reduce the risk of not achieving quorum, and make it easier to arrange and hold meetings quickly. Disadvantages of electronic voting and electronic meetings. Directors or members may not take the time to fully discuss an important issue. Not meeting face-to-face eliminates being able to read body language and nonverbal cues. Meetings may lose their formal focus when everything is accomplished by email. It is not the intention of organizations to have meetings where it becomes commonplace to have electronic meetings. Too much opportunity for discussion of important issues is lost. With emails not being signed, they could be sent in error by someone. It makes it harder to formalize the process. A Canadian example we're going to look at is Nipissing University in Ontario. While many organizations are working towards changes in their bylaws to include electronic voting, not everyone posts their bylaws on the internet. Nipissing University in Ontario wanted to let others know the route they took for their bylaw changes. Under this Nipissing University example, they've set forth their policy to establish their guidelines. The purpose of this policy is to establish guidelines for the use of email polling and electronic voting with regard to the decision-making authority of the Board of Governors and its committees. Under scope, this policy will outline the circumstances where email polling and electronic voting are permitted and will detail the guideline for their use. Under general, it's the expectation of all board members that material presented at meetings will be clear, complete, and understandable in terms of the requirements placed upon them for action or response. Therefore, the intent of this policy is to ensure that the same comfort level of a regular face-to-face meeting is maintained while providing a clear explanation as to why the mechanism of email polling or electronic voting is being invoked in lieu of a regular meeting. And then, of course, they put forth their policy, and part of it that they have listed here is electronic voting is permitted at all board and committee meetings, either by verbal response to the question, via live teleconference or video conference, where anonymity is not required or where individually recorded votes are not required. It can be an email sent to the secretary of the meeting, which provides a written record of the vote if required or serves as the equivalent of a secret ballot for individuals not actually present in the meeting room. Email polling is not permitted in any regular or special meeting of the board, and email polling is not permitted at any regular or special meeting of board committees with the exception of the executive committee. And carries on and goes forth, but then at the end, as a review, this policy will be reviewed at regular intervals, not to exceed 3 years, to determine whether amendments are necessary. Here's an example from Farm Management Canada. Their annual general meeting was held by webinar and they used electronic voting. Recently, the organization Farm Management Canada made some changes to their constitution. In order to save some costs, they moved from having an annual general meeting face-to-face to now having their AGM set up as a webinar process. They've set up an electronic voting process so that all board members have opportunity to vote on matters important to the board. Silent bylaws. The Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act provides default rules for your corporations if your bylaws are silent. You have the option of overriding many of these rules by setting out your own rules in the bylaws, or if you choose, in the articles. In some cases, the model bylaws provide alternate rules to the default ones. If your bylaws are silent, it means the information you might want in there is not listed. The Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act provides for default rules in your organization if they're missing them. They provide model bylaws, which are examples of bylaws that organizations can use if they wish, as they are making changes to their own bylaws and need help with the wording. Default rules or model bylaws. Please go to this website, Canada Not-for-Profit Corporation site, to find out more details. Methods of voting have to be recognized in your bylaws. The model bylaws are put there so organizations can follow the template of what is needed in their bylaws. The following examples on the next few slides are taken as default rules from the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporation. Many examples are listed so you can choose what wording works best for your organization. Really important to remember that these are suggested guidelines and you are free to use your own wording to create your bylaws. Absentee voting. Subsection 171(1) of the Act provides that the bylaws may set out any prescribed methods of voting by members not in attendance at a meeting of members. The methods of voting prescribed by Section 74 of the regulations are A. Voting by proxy, B. Voting by mailed-in ballot, and C. Voting by means of telephone, electronic, or other communications facility in accordance with the regulations. If the bylaws prescribe any method of absentee voting, they're also required to set out procedures for collecting, counting, and reporting the results of any vote. Absentee voting by proxy. Pursuant to Section 171(1) of the Act, a member entitled to vote at a meeting of members may vote by proxy by appointing in writing a proxy holder and one or more alternative proxy holders who are not required to be members, dependent on your bylaws, to attend and act at the meeting in the manner and to the extent authorized by the proxy and with the authority conferred by it subject to the following requirements. A proxy is only valid at the meeting in respect of which it is given, or at a continuation of that meeting after an adjournment. A proxy holder and an alternate proxy holder has the same rights as a member by whom they were appointed, including the right to speak at a meeting of members in respect of any matter, to vote by way of ballot at the meeting, to demand a ballot at the meeting, and, except where a proxy holder or an alternate proxy holder has conflicting instructions from more than one member, to vote at the meeting by the way of a show of hands. Absentee voting by mail ballot. Pursuant to Section 171(1), Absentee Voting of the Act, a member entitled to vote at a meeting of members may vote by mailed-in ballot if the corporation has a system that enables the votes to be gathered in a manner that permits their subsequent verification and permits the tallied votes to be presented to the corporation without it being possible for the corporation to identify how each member voted. Pursuant to subsection 197(1), fundamental change of the Act, a special resolution of the members is required to make any amendments to the bylaws of the corporation to change this method of voting by members not in attendance at a meeting of members. Absentee voting by electronic ballot. Pursuant to Section 171(1), Absentee Voting of the Act, a member entitled to vote at a meeting of members may vote by means of a telephonic, electronic, or other communication facility if the corporation has a system that enables the votes to be gathered in a manner that permits their subsequent verification and permits the tallied votes to be presented to the corporation without it being possible for the corporation to identify how each member voted. Pursuant to subsection 197(1), fundamental change of the Act, a special resolution of the members is required to make any amendments to the bylaws of the corporation to change this method of voting by members not in attendance at a meeting of members. Email, conference call, online or electronic meetings. New and emerging area with advances in technology. It's very important that bylaws reflect the alternative voting methods allowed by the organization. Remember, the option is that it is possible to write a bylaw that doesn't allow any form of alternative voting in your organization. However voting is conducted, there must be a way that all members receive good information so that they can make an informed decision when voting. Good minute taking needs to happen at all meetings with the minutes available to all members. In summary, check with legal counsel in your area as to what is allowed for alternative and electronic voting in your organization. Review your bylaws and make a policy regarding electronic voting using support from model bylaw suggestions. Review your policy every 2 to 3 years to keep it current. On this slide, you'll see all the resources that were used throughout the presentation, and these are the websites that you can visit to get the same information. Please stay connected. Send any questions to our leadership@gov.mb.ca email. Please make time to visit our Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development Industry Leadership webpage at www.gov.mb.ca/agriculture. There you'll find a number of resources including fact sheets and worksheets, templates, and guidebooks that will help strengthen your organization. You will also find contact information for rural leadership specialists who are available to work with your ag organization. The Industry Leadership webpage. The website contains a wealth of information related to starting an organization, developing a strategic plan, being a board member, being working on board operations, and dissolving an organization. The resources section also contains a number of tools and links that you will find helpful. Please join the conversation with Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development. Subscribe to our newsletter. Visit our website. Call our General Inquiries line. View our videos on YouTube or follow us on Twitter. Thank you.